Dear Harstem, Protoss is IMBA. Each unit is imbalanced, like this game. I used unclear meaning construction process. As long as you can't understand it, your opponent can't understand it even more. I think what this guy means with this sentence is that he purposefully plays terrible build orders so that his opponent gets confused. Kind of like it, actually. Then, in the mid-game, the opponent gathers IMBA zealots to attack, but I am perfectly defended. After that, he chose to transform into a high-quality army, carrier and disruptor. I choose to fight him. The Liberator destroys his disruptors, but not his carriers. Thor also can't beat an aircraft carrier. GG. My Terran versus Protoss win rate is only 37%. Protoss will not be able to play. There is no need to play this game. Now, these last few sentences made very little sense. Overall, highly confusing balance complaint form. The name is Iceland. Race is Terran. The league is Diamond at 4.5k MMR. And the server is Korean. Oh, yes. We got a Korean Diamond player at 4.5k MMR. And he says that every single Protoss unit is imbalanced. Or perhaps he sucks. Let's figure it out. Now, before we truly get into it, I want to note two things. In the loading screen, I saw that the opponent of Iceland is actually a 5.1 or 5.2k Korean Grandmaster Protoss player. So a solid, 700 MMR above Iceland. That is going to be the first note that I will make. And on top of that, there's a couple of things that confused me a little bit. The way the form was written was, they were sentences, but sometimes they didn't make complete sense. And it reminded me a little bit of how the ChatGPT would talk to you. You know, sometimes there are just sentences and words in there that don't quite belong there. Then the second clue that we might actually be dealing with an AI, another real person, is the fact that Iceland's email address, the one that they need to submit on the imbalance complaint form, consist of pure numbers. Now, my theory is because that is his microchip number, and not because for whatever reason he decided to pick a number. Because I've met many people in my life. I've exchanged many email addresses. Not once in my entire life have I met someone whose entire email address consisted of pure numbers. That makes absolutely no sense. And from now on, I will be treating this game as if we are watching an AI. And if you're a little bit familiar with my videos, you know that I'm not super fond of AIs. ChatGPT was incapable of providing a decent build order to me. AlphaStar took like 3 years to figure out that oversaturating your main base with 35 workers wasn't the most optimal play. So whenever we take a look at these build orders, we kind of have to keep the limitations of regular artificial intelligence in mind, and that it doesn't function optimally. They don't have the big human brains. You know, it's a little bit different. They work in different ways as well. So we got to keep that in mind. Perhaps that is also like the cool creative thing that my man Iceland wrote in the complaint form, saying that his build order makes no sense, so his opponent doesn't know what he's doing either. That's the type of logic you love to hear from a bot. And indeed, this build order makes absolutely... Well, actually, this build is not that bad. I actually kind of like this one. Just a pretty fast Hellion from a Marine, really quick factory, with an armory as well. I'm actually kind of a fan of this build. Good creativity here. Double Hellion into mines, because we are seeing the armory, and then you just go for a 4 or a triple mine drop, and you should be fine. Do I like that we have the CC on the high ground? I actually don't. The 2 Hellions should give you... Oh, okay, that's a lot worse, actually. Yeah, that's not good, doing a supply drop like this, but we'll get into that later. The 2 Hellions should give you enough presence together with the Marine that you can clear any units that come towards your side of the map until your mines finish up. And the moment your mines finish up, you can just burrow them up the ramp and your CC should be absolutely safe. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this, but maybe I understand it. Maybe he's afraid of like a proxy gate or something like this. He's lost too many times to proxy gates. Like, all right, every single time that I can, I'm gonna build my CC on the high ground. Now, the depot drop is always bad. A depot drop saves you 100 minerals, but an actual mule could get you 225 minerals. So every time you see a depot drop, that means that someone just lost 125 minerals. Although I guess you can also count the building time that the SCV has added on top of it, which I didn't do. So maybe 100 minerals, but it does cost a fair amount. It's really, really bad for Terran, especially in the early game. It's almost an entire barracks that you can produce due to being delayed. Luckily for Aislinn, the one thing he doesn't need right now is money, because despite it only being 4 minutes into the game, he was already floating a solid 500. It's gonna move this out. Although this medevac has already been damaged and we didn't quite see a repair, he's still just moving out with it straight away. No, goes back, sends it across the map. Not entirely sure what he wants to do with this, but it doesn't look very solid so far. Not a huge fan of this build order. Not a huge fan of the fact that this Hellion just morphed into a Hellbat Eater and then didn't attack any workers. Surely, if you do have a Hellion, you want to kill the workers. Now, I know AIs have trouble with object permanence and also kind of understanding that if something isn't in one position, that it probably is in a different position. But this is really taking the crown in bad decision making. Look at this. Just look at this, okay? What are we seeing here? Now, technically, Phoenixes could be in 3 locations, logically. Either the Phoenixes are harassing the Terran player, or they are defending. That leaves 2 locations left for the Phoenixes. Either they're defending the main base, or they're defending the natural. The Hellbat in the natural sees a complete lack of Phoenixes in the natural. So what would the logical thing be to do? Is to send something in the natural. If you're not sure where the Phoenixes are, you're afraid of them being in between, what you could do is you drop 1 mine at this location, you walk it into the natural as you boost into the main. You split your chances that way. The worst thing to do is to boost your medevac into a location where, according to my logic, 95% of the time the Phoenixes, and in this case also an Oracle, are just going to be waiting for you. Not a very fantastic move. Quite a bad move, actually. It's not going to get a single mine to burrow. This Protoss is quite fast. Not a surprise, because he's about 600-700 MMR above Aislinn over here. And at this point, I would almost say that the game is completely over. If you play a Torvash, one of the most important things is to have a very high marine count with it, and then you pull SCVs and you go ASAP. The timing of this Torvash is hot garbage. There's no there's still a medevac alive. I was gonna say there's no medevac alive anymore, but this one's still barely alive. Never mind, just died. There's no medevac alive anymore, which means that marines can't attack. So this Torvash has already been stopped, despite it never having left the base. And Thor rushes are generally quite bad to go into a later game, because Thors are really expensive and they don't really contribute anything. I mean, they're okay anti-air, but so is a Cyclone, and a Cyclone is a lot cheaper. You don't require an armory for it. So in this game so far, we've seen a lot of investment into units that aren't being used whatsoever, which most of the time is not the ideal thing to do in Starcraft II. Another Viking coming out. I'm also not entirely sure if this is a macro build or an all-in. It is really difficult because the eco sucks, but the unit count also sucks. So it can't really be an all-in. It can't really be a macro build either. And he's taking 4 gases. Oh. He's taking 4 gases before infrastructure. He plays mech. It is a mech player. And I should have figured it out as well. That's the... All the clues were there. All the clues were there. The imbalance complaint form made absolutely no sense. The email address was a number. Hey, this guy was different than other people. I could have figured it out. He dropped, as a 3rd depot, he dropped it on top of his depot because he couldn't remember to build depots. People that play mech for the simple reason that mech units give more supply, and thus it's easier to spend your money. They're also more expensive. Mech players are basically Protoss players in disguise, but then playing the human race. They wish they were Protoss. The funny thing is that mech players complain the most about Protoss, despite them being the exact same thing, you know? They wish they picked Protoss when they were young. They wished it so much. Oh, they would have loved to be a Protoss player, sitting back at home, building big bulky units, winning games they don't deserve to. That is the mech player standard. Oy. This feels absolutely terrible right now here for Aislinn, honestly. Technically, this game is already over, except Aislinn isn't aware of it yet. And the reason why this game is already over is because he doesn't meet the requirements to win a game. A game with mech has never been has never been winnered at a high level. And I'm gonna explain this to you. It just doesn't cut the requirements. It's as if, imagine you're entering a competition in which the goal is to draw Donald Duck, the Disney character, and make it look as much like Donald Duck as possible. So everyone, draws Donald Duck, colors it in as well, and you show up with a dog turd on a plate, and you painted it blue. The judges are not going to judge your dog turd because it is not a drawing of Donald Duck. Just like this game isn't an actual game. You're not meeting the requirements of what it takes to be competitive in Terran versus Protoss. Because what it takes to be competitive in Terran versus Protoss is to play bio. Mech simply doesn't work. It's a composition that has been tested again and again by many people, and it is always shown to be incapable of winning games, at least at the higher level. Now, I'm going to assume that the same issues are still here for mech that there are at the higher level. Yes, you can win individual fights, but you can do that while having high eco, and it's also impossible to kill Protoss players, or close to impossible to kill Protoss players. Protoss players really need to mess up in order to die against mech, so you're making life extremely difficult for yourself. The funny thing is that if Aislinn were to play bio, he probably would be lower MMR, but he'd have more potential to grow further, because mech, there's like a hard cap to where you can grow. It's like there's like a mech glass ceiling, basically. Like, you can't get through it because mech freaking sucks. And I mean, we're already kind of seeing it. Not much has happened this game. Any mech opener always is going to be behind in supply majority of the time, or it's going to be extremely unsafe. Just the way how the production works. You can't get that many Marines. Your Marines that you do build, if you build a lot of them, are going to be useless. How is it possible that legitimately, out of the 7 depots that we currently have, 4 of them have a hat on top of them and have like the super depot drop? That's a lot of money that has been wasted here. Now we get one of the worst attacks that I've seen in a while into a mech army, and I still believe that it's kind of okay for the Protoss, just purely based on the fact that he's up a base already, that he understands that Immortals are good, and okay, this game is practically just over, isn't it? Just target down some of these Immortals, just wait for your next round of Zealots, and you're gonna kill 10, 15 workers here. And the beauty of this is that you reset a lot. Ooh, actually, this is an okay defense. 57. Yeah, even after this, it doesn't matter that much. You can rebuild very quickly as Protoss. You have superior eco still. You can expand to a 5th base. And Terran actually needs a very large amount of units to continue expanding, because their defensive rotations are so slow. They just need a lot of units. So there's always some units in every position. Sensor towers are a great tool, but aren't being used at all. Turrets aren't being used in the main base either. One of the easiest ways to die with mech is to have a zealot warp happen into your main base. That didn't quite kick off here. Now, transition is going to be triple Stargates, a fleet beacon, and +1. We already have a Stargate. Is that a second Cybercore? I love this. This Protoss player is actually quite good. If it wasn't for that terrible fight that he just took here, this game actually would have ended already, and you and your dog turd would have been kicked back to the lobby screen. But instead, you're still in the game here, Aislinn. Okay, let's have a look. Robo Bay, good decision. This Protoss actually is making a lot of correct calls. He should have taken a 5th base already, maybe even a 6th. I think double expanding against mech is almost always worth it as well. Double Disruptor is good if you see, a high Thor count. Now, I just kind of want to also take a look at what both players have seen so far in this game. So for our Protoss player, he's fairly aware of production facilities, the army composition of the opponent, the amount of bases, all of that good jazz. Aislinn knows nothing. The last thing Aislinn scouted was the fact that there were 3 gases, 2 gateways, and a Stargate. That is it. Not aware of any of the transitions coming in, not aware of the amount of bases. How can you make a solid decision without knowing anything in the game? How can you change your unit composition based on what you scout if you don't scout? How can you stop your opponent's eco from absolutely snowballing if you never harass? You only have 67 workers 12 minutes into the game. Your opponent could have anything from 45 workers at this point to 96. Like, you haven't stopped your opponent at any point. You haven't killed any workers. 0, none, nada, nientos. You tried initially with the mine drop, but there you failed. And since then you haven't tried again. You have plenty of Hellions to try and get some map control, plenty of Hellions to try and deal some damage. There's not even even cannons here. Honestly, the one weakness that this Protoss has is the lack of static defense, and the fact that the 5th base was actually kind of late, making him economically a little bit vulnerable. Maybe you even had a push-out timing here. Look at this. You have 7 Thors, 10 Hellbats, 4 Liberators. Maybe you were the one, the King Arthur of Terrans, the one player that could make mech work at least one time during this transition. But you didn't scout, you didn't scan, you did absolutely nothing. You defended, and then you allowed your opponent to build up an entire army again, go up to 90 freaking workers, and transition into carriers, all at the exact same time. Fantastic job. You have to be the most passive person in the entire world. You're the type of guy that gets a drink spilled on him in a restaurant and then apologizes to the waitress. Is a little bit pathetic, my friend. Like, you're getting abused over here by this Protoss. Fusion core going up on the 3rd base. We have 2... How many planetaries are you building? What is this? Why are you defending your 3rd base with 2 planetaries? If this is also going to be a planetary, I'm going to be really upset. This just makes absolutely no sense. Why would you even want to defend 3 base? Like, you get the 3rd base for free. You don't have to set this up. Like, this is something you do once you have the 5th over here and you need to spread out your army. But right now, your entire army was in this location. You don't need planetaries in every single base and still leaving your main vulnerable to drops. Like, my Protoss man is going to walk up here and see, hey, oh, well, there's a planetary, a couple of turrets there. Wonder if there's a way around it. Surely the main has turrets on it. Boom, Prism flies in, 10 Zealots warp in, you instantly lose the game. There's literally nothing you can do anymore. +3, your upgrades are actually very good compared to your opponent. But you're still playing with a composition that is practically being hard countered right now. The Thor does get hard countered by disruptors usually, and you don't have Vikings to deal with carriers. I guess if you have a lot of Liberators, I'm not even quite sure what is the ideal comp here against Carrier Disruptor if your plan is to play mech, because I've never seen this before. Like, usually it would be like Ghost, Viking, Marauder, Medevac, bunch of Liberators there as well, and you're probably going to be fine against an army like this. But if your entire goal in life is to play a non-viable unit composition, I'm just not entirely sure what the plan should be either. Like, if you put such strong limitations on yourself, it's really difficult. Okay, we are gonna see a push out now at 1450. Is this the first time you actually maxed? No, you've been maxed here, you've been maxed here. Okay, so you basically maxed out at the 14-minute mark. And then you waited for a minute so that your opponent also gets his final carriers out. +2 is almost done for the toss. And that is the timing where you decide to actually push out. I like that. Okay. Good call. Very, very good call. So your opponent is completely set up. Look at these disruptors. If they actually get controlled semi-decently, yeah. Disruptors are so good against Thors, honestly. So good against Thors. Let's lose a couple of disruptors, but as long as you lower the Thor count, say, a decent amount, your carriers are going to end up winning. That's always what happens. And also, if you clear a lot of the Hellbats, a Zealot warping can do the job for you, because there's nothing to really tank for the Zealots, to tank the Zealots with anymore. Ooh, sets up all of the Liberators in positions that aren't really fighting anything. It's an interesting call. From Disruptors, it's also not a good fight out of the toss, honestly. Some Disruptors are going to hit. This wasn't great. I would love to see these Liberators actually being unsieged so you can fight the Interceptors with them. That would have helped massively. Because it really lowers the Interceptors count significantly at a very high pace. This fight, honestly, was actually quite good. Look at this. Resources lost overall is like 8k in favor for Iceland right now. I can't believe you're still in this game despite playing mech. You're also expanded to a 5th base. I can't actually believe my eyes. You're almost winning with mech against someone that's 700 MMR higher than you. You're playing a completely nonsense build order with like some weird Thor rush, which you don't actually attack with. Then you play a non-viable unit composition in which you hit a timing that is 50 seconds delayed. And you're still... I'm not sure if you're ahead, but you're alive. I mean... Have you figured something out yet? Okay, now you're now aware of the fact that there's a 3rd base. Not aware yet if there's gases or not. I guess you have figured out your opponent's unit composition as well, but I don't actually think you care. I think your entire play from the start was to go into Thor, Hellbat, Liberator, and then eventually add battle cruisers. Like, there's no countering here. Your unit comp doesn't change based on what you scout. Your unit comp changes based on what time it is in the game, just like with most AIs. Most AIs, they just have like a progression level, you know? They start with Lynx in the early game, at the 3-minute mark they get some roaches, at the 5-minute mark they'll start adding in some other units. You're like one of the very primitive AIs still. That's what you are here, Aislinn. Beep boop. 5th base is up, Raven. Now I know for sure you're not a real Terran human, because there is no Terrans in the world that would admit to a Raven being useful in the late game, despite them being useful. They're very, very good, and I would compliment you on this play, but it also immediately supports my theory that you're not actually a human. Because Terrans have a single control group. You can't have battle cruisers and liberators and Hellions and Thors and a Raven. You need more than one control group, it's not possible. Do we have any upgrades here for this? You have ship weapons level 1. Flying around. Honestly, still somewhat a viable game here for you. It just... it didn't blink away. It kind of... Oh, there's no blink. Oh, no wonder it didn't blink away. It still kind of pisses me off that you haven't tried to harass once with Hellions. A lot of these bases would have actually been quite vulnerable to Hellions. Like, if you just run around them rather than running into the cannons, even here, if you go towards the left side, you could actually kill a lot of workers. And if you've done it a bit earlier, it's maybe one of the ways you can win is you take a very good fight and your opponent doesn't have the eco to rebuild. Yeah, then you can actually win the game. Oh, this is a cool move. He attacks the Rockstar to then try and go into this. What's happening here? Why are these BCs dealing so much damage? This is a cool move, by the way. This is actually a really nice move here out of Aislinn. This is good. Completely tricking the Protoss player into going to the bottom right with a simple 2 BCs, then teleporting top left while also pushing out with loads of Thors. And then taking out this base. This was a very good move. Now, an even higher level play is then if your next BCs go to the far bottom right again. The moment this army moves away. So that way you're killing 2 bases still. You're gonna get this one for free, and then either your BCs are gonna get a kill here, or you're not gonna get attacked, and you know it for sure. I almost feel like that if you hold the next push, which seems somewhat impossible, you're going to be in a good spot. There's 3-2-2 upgrades. BCs are just getting owned, aren't they? Yeah. Freaking Void Rays are really not that bad. Ooh. Liberators, though. Look at that interceptor count. It's not actually going down at all. Still lots of disruptors. Yeah, I feel like the Protoss really just kind of figured out that mech at this point isn't a viable composition. To be fair, with the amount of time that Aislinn gave to our Protoss player, Protoss probably could have just tapped down and looked for some guide online. Like, hey, how do I beat mech? Because Aislinn decided to absolutely do nothing with his lead. I'm a huge fan of that. 3rd base died. It's like, okay. So, gave my opponent a lot of time. He crafted the perfect army, took out my base. Let me see if I can keep everything together and then just have a better fight, despite absolutely nothing changing. Another Raven on the way? You think we'll ever see an anti-armor missile? I'd love to see that. Or just interference matrices. That would be the sickest thing. A Terran that actually uses like 10 interference matrices on an entire air army would be so cool. That actually would be super sick. Couple of scans. I love that he's scanning around the map right now. Yeah, she's gonna lose his base again. His army is just garbage. It actually... I don't understand how you got to this level. By playing mech, just straight Thors every single game. It legitimately makes no sense. And I love that he kind of tried to deflect criticism of that move already by saying he played a nonsense build order. So that his opponent also... this is not how it works. This is like saying at the start of a football match that you're gonna score in your own goal to confuse the opponent. It's like, yeah, they might be confused, but they're also just up. It's like, confusion is only good if it's followed up by, you know, something strong. If you knock yourself out in the first round in boxing, your opponent is really confused, but you're also knocked out. Like, I can draw infinite analogies with real life situations here that would confuse the opponent, but would also just be bad. Walk into a Starbucks, buy a drink, pay for it, throw it on the floor. Starbucks barista is going to be insanely confused, but you're without coffee. Do you want more? I could keep going all day. go into the grocery store, grab a bottle of milk, smash it on the floor, then punch all the wine bottles in your sight and break them, you're probably gonna get arrested. But I bet both the police officer and everyone working in that grocery store are going to be extremely confused. Good job. Confusion isn't a positive. Just because someone else is confused doesn't mean that's necessarily a good situation. Oh my god, this is a sick fight. Now that was confusing and almost worked. But then again, it didn't. Maybe because 8 of your Thors weren't really in the fight. Maybe because you had slightly too many Liberators. But you almost got your opponent. And I'm kind of proud of that. Now the game is completely over. You're flying over with a command center. TOS just has too much money. Overall resources lost is now even as well. So after Protoss realized how to fight, I think this game pretty much ended. Yeah, GG gets called. I'm happy to see that. I guess most bots are capable of typing out GG. So maybe not too surprising. But yeah, it is a ridiculous game. I don't even know what to say. How can you say that every single unit is imbalanced if you've been training perfectly fine in this game with freaking Thor Hellbat Liberator? Until your opponent got the exact counter against that composition. You didn't change your comp once. You just continued playing the same thing. Like, I think in this case, you're just not allowed to complain at all. You don't deserve it, my friend. You just do not deserve it. You sucked. Protoss is an imbalance. And that's my verdict here today. That is going to be it as well for this video. Thanks all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this game. If you did, don't forget to like button, subscribe to our channel, and hopefully I'll see all of you next time for a new video. Thanks so much, and bye-bye.